Hey guys, welcome back. DripCoach here with Drip and Farm Forward Property, where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. Today we're diving into a clip or recap, summary, however you want to call it, with Jack Mallers, the CEO founder of Strike, and a podcast he did with Zuby about 2 weeks ago. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because he has a very unique way of describing Bitcoin that I think is easy to digest and understand and makes it really hit home. So we're going to break that down. Stay tuned. All right, first and foremost, you probably or may not know who Jack Mallers is and or what Strike is. So the best way to understand Strike is it's a payment processing platform similar to Cash App or PayPal. And a lot of these processing platforms are getting into the game of basically using Bitcoin because it is globally accepted everywhere. And it eliminates the middleman. Now they kind of become the middleman between you and that other person, but at least it's not the middleman like central banks, governments, conversion rates, all this other crap. And this one's unique because it's just came out 2020, so it's relatively new still. And Jack Mallers is very young. I think he just got into his 30s, but it's built on a Lightning network, and they recently made some new updates where now they even have like DCA, a no fee DCA. So you can buy Bitcoin on a Lightning network at hourly, weekly, daily, monthly intervals, and there's no charge for that. And again, it's on Lightning, so it's cheaper and faster. So very robust app, and he's got lots of developments, things like that coming along. It's been in the news, all sorts of stuff. So a legit guy that's been around Bitcoin for about 10 years. His actual dad is willing to introduce it to him. And his family comes from kind of a financial background space. But the point being is that I want to play this clip. It's a bunch of different, well, it's one long clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing. We're going to break it up. But I want to digest or get into his kind of way of explaining kind of Bitcoin and money and energy. So if you're listening to Michael Saylor, then you probably heard some of these similarities, and Bitcoiners tend to kind of navigate to these analogies. But to me, Jack explains it a little more digestible. Michael Saylor uses engineering background, and that's how he kind of sticks with things. But Jack seems a little more down to earth, for lack of a better word. So I'm going to play this clip of Zuby introducing this, and then we'll break some of it down.
That's amazing. This is not explicitly a Bitcoin podcast. So there are going to be a good chunk of people listening to this who have heard about Bitcoin. Maybe they've heard another Bitcoiner on the podcast here or there. They've seen me mention it maybe, but they don't know what it really is. They don't know the value proposition. They don't know what you mean when you say it's programmed to go up forever. So I want to kind of go back to basics a little bit.
Sure.
So for someone who's just listening to this podcast, who's maybe heard about Bitcoin, but they haven't really thought about it and been exposed to it properly, can you give them the 101 on what the Bitcoin value proposition is in your eyes?
Totally, yeah.
So this is where we're going to get into, I wanted to preface that with Zuby's question so you understand what's coming from. But he's going to give a couple of different like analogies on imagining money as a way to store time and energy. Again, if you listen to any other Bitcoiners like Michael Saylor, you've heard this before. But his take on it is that when you work, you exchange your time and effort for money. But the caveat is, what if that value of money keeps shrinking? And this is where Bitcoin comes in, because unlike traditional money, which governments can print more of, devaluing your time and energy, Bitcoin is limited to where there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, and even less if you count the ones that are lost, so to speak. And of course, the ones that will actually be around during our time frame if you're watching this video. So this fixed supply means your Bitcoin or your time and energy can't be debased, unlike your time and energy being debased by central governments. So let's take a listen.
I actually think the best place to start is understanding money a bit better. I like to think of money as our time and our energy in an abstracted form. What I mean by that is you do this podcast in exchange for that, you get money. I run Strike in exchange for that, you get money. You mow a lawn, you fix a windshield, you drive a car for someone else, you get money. So money is the market good that captures our collective contributions to society. It's intended to capture our time and energy so that that time and energy can either be saved or be traded, right? You can't go to the restaurant after this podcast and say, hey guys, I just recorded a podcast, I'll take 2 steaks. They're like, what? I don't want that. That's what we call barter, right? To solve for barter and scale the economy and allow us to hyper specialize on something like a podcast. Like a podcast isn't a tradable market good for dinner, for gas, for groceries, but it is for money. And so money is that market good, again, for abstracted time and energy. Now.
And that's interesting because I feel like the barter system is somewhat coming back to some degree. Like, yes, we still have that currency or money in the middle, and that makes things much more efficient. But I feel like something is cooking in regards to how these altcoins and communities and social tokens, as Rob Powell called it, is coming back into the fray. So it's still using a money or a medium, but there's little pockets of people and resources and things that are coming up to where you'll exchange your good or service for this medium that is no longer Bitcoin or anything else, or gold or fiat. It's something that the collective population has decided is money. So kind of like the old days where, yeah, you bartered, you use, your cattle or whatever the case may be, and everybody decided, one chicken is worth this many pieces of cloth and this much bread or whatever. Now it's kind of that group of people is like, okay, it's worth this many XYZ token, and you can add value by sharing the podcast or subscribing and bringing others on board and all this other stuff. It's kind of a medium, in my opinion, like we're going back to that with these different social tokens and alt tokens and stuff like that. Not the shit coins, but the ones where real communities are being built around it and people adding value to it. But let's continue.
If I were to store my time and energy in wheat, for example, let's go through that mental exercise. So I work all day on whatever I'm doing, and in return, I get wheat. Well, how good is that money, as wheat being the money, at persisting and saving through time? Well, it's very bad because it's going to go bad and moldy and stale. And so that wheat is going to be worth 0 in about a week, right? Everyone has moldy bread. And then how good is that money in exchange? Can I send that wheat to Europe on my phone, right? And so thinking of money as how to capture your time and energy is a very powerful idea, as opposed to like a piece of paper or as opposed to something that your government, whatever, tells you to use. Then contrast it to the dollar. If a government can print their own money and debase their money, that means they're debasing by proxy your time and energy.
That's crazy. Like, it took me a while to actually process that statement, and you don't really think of it that way, but they're literally, and you've heard of this, like inflation stealing from you or whatever, but yeah, they control that, as he said, paper, right? That's all it is. And they don't have to invest any additional finite capital, i.e. time or their energy. They just make more of it and steal yours. That's crazy.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So also a government's ability to borrow their own money is, in my opinion, as close to time travel as we've ever seen, because you're borrowing the time and energy from the collective populace from the future. That's crazy. You're taking time and energy from the future and saying, we'll pay back at some point. That's as close to time travel and as malicious of an act. But every time the US government prints a dollar, they're devaluing me in my life, because I've spent time and energy here on this planet. In return for that, I've got US dollars, and now those US dollars are worth less, so I'm worth less.
Yes.
Yeah, that's nuts. Again, like, I never heard it explained that simplistic, and it may rub people the wrong way, but that's essentially what's going on behind the scenes. So like he said, you are putting in your time and energy. He's on this podcast, I'm making this video. You spend time watching these videos. You have to go to work, whatever the case is. And then you're exchanging this finite resource, your time, your energy, to get this other resource that someone else does not have to actually expend any time and energy to create. And then, like he said, they can borrow against it. So it's like, okay, we're going to pay this back in the future, but we're going to use it now. and to use it now, we're just going to make more of it, but we promise to pay it back. Like that's nuts. Like I never really thought about it like this, but that's exactly how it should be explained to people, and like how we orange pill people, so to speak. It's like you got to break it down into like really simple terms and make it something that's visceral, you know, like really like a gut punch. It's like, damn, yeah, I am being stolen from, and the most precious resource that I have is being debased, and I can't get that back unless I put my time and energy into something that cannot be stolen.
And so the idea that you have a money that's fixed, can't be debased. So the holder, the time and energy of those that hold it cannot be debased. And then that lives outside the purview of a government or a central party or a corporation or any individual is the most powerful concept when it comes to storing our time and energy. And you'd have to think through the history of money. Well, historically, you try and get as close as you can, right? Bitcoin right now, I believe, is as close as we can to the perfect store for our collective time and energy. But once upon a time, it was gold.
Yes.
Why? Because those collection of chemicals get us kind of close. It's harder to find more gold and debase our time and energy than it is silver, than it is copper, right? And people think of real estate as a place to store wealth, store time and energy. Why? Because you can't print any more land. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean you can't print any more real estate, right? They're going to build a building that's 1,000 stories high in Manhattan one day. So
that is a topic that Michael Saylor has touched on, about them actually creating more real estate and creating land. So they actually can build more land. And the most beautiful way I've seen this done, or best way, is over in Singapore. I haven't actually been to Singapore yet. That's still on my list. But they have built an entire island out of trash. They literally burn all their trash and filter it and do all this awesome stuff to it, to where they have now started to expand the island, or create a new island, so to speak, and expand it using trash. And it's a really nice resort kind of area. So, and I think they're doing it on other, not with trash, but they are, you know, dumping dirt and expanding areas in other places to create more real estate. So that is not a finite resource anymore either.
So we've tried to find vehicles that are close enough at the time and energy piece. And Bitcoin, my interpretation of Satoshi and Bitcoin is the tool that's best equipped to be money, which is the tool that's best equipped to store your time and energy and allow you to save it and exchange it for something in the market. So that advancement is so powerful. Here's the last, sorry, I know I'm ranting at this point, but I think the last thing I'll say, and this may get a little weird or dark, but I like to compare the guarantee and promise of Bitcoin as a fixed money to the guarantee and promise of death, and that we can't live forever. What I mean by that is that the fact that I'm going to die, and I know I'm going to die, is what allows me to value my life. If I knew I could live forever, I'd go to the gym in 10,000 years. I'd think about reproducing in 100,000 years. Why would I? The point is, how would I ever be able to value today? If there's infinite amounts of dollars, infinite amounts of debt, infinite amounts of printing currency, it doesn't allow me to value the paycheck I'm getting now. And so the promise.
And I never thought of it that way either. It's like, yeah, we talk about the finite and fixed supply of Bitcoin. And I've also heard people use the analogy about, you know, roses and things of that nature, where the roses have value when you give it to someone, because inherently we know, especially if they're live, real roses or flowers for that matter, we use this thing because we know that it is finite. So something inherently in us looks at scarcity and the ability for something to actually only be here temporarily as having additional value. And we know it for certain things, but I never looked at it tying it to like life and then money, because yeah, there is no scarcity in the money supply. And if there's no scarcity, then yeah, it's very hard to value it. And you can see that the lack of ability to value it is exactly why we have inflation. It has to get devalued. So if you can't value something, then you can only do the opposite. It has no value or it devalues, right? So it literally plays out exactly as he just said. And yeah, it never really clicked until he gave that analogy for me.
That I will die is what allows me to value my life. Time as an asset is infinite, but my time isn't. And it's the promise of Bitcoin, the fact that I have a money that is fixed, that actually allows me to value my time and energy right now. And so when you hear Bitcoiners say, I got into Bitcoin, I got healthier. I got into Bitcoin, I lowered my time preference. I got into Bitcoin and I thought about the world differently. It is going from a life of infinity, which is impossible to value, to a life that is finite, that requires you to value it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
To me, it's just a life.
Yeah, we'll cap it there. Like this, to me, Jack just dropped a bunch of gold nuggets throughout this podcast. I'm not going to play the entire clip, but this section here, this middle section, is really the whole thing's worth listening to, but I just really found this part super interesting because he explains how this is happening and the wealth gap and all that stuff like that. Because if they're devaluing it, then again, it has to go somewhere, and the somewhere that it goes to the people that are pretty much the richest. So as he says in here, the top 10% make 90% or own 90% of the economy, so to speak. I forgot what the exact phrase is, but the bulk of the wealth in the world is stored in like the top 10%, top 5%. And when devaluation happens or debasement happens, all that does is shift more of that back into their hands. Why? Because those people own the assets that devaluation goes into. So if you own real estate in Manhattan, as Michael Saylor likes to say, and the currency gets devalued, well, that has to go into something. If you own stocks and shares in certain companies that are getting supported by this, then that devaluation goes into those. So those people that own that now have more of that capital or that asset. In this case, money, fiat. And the people that were working hard in the bottom 90% to create that, they get further separated. Basically, the gap expands because they just lost that time, and now it's exponentially bigger than what it was before, and you're losing more in time of your energy, and they had to do nothing to get it. So it's nuts, man. Anyway, the whole point of this video, summarizing now, is if you got friends and family that are unfamiliar with Bitcoin and this value proposition, I think this is a great podcast to listen to and find ways to break down and share with people. It's an hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes. They may not want the whole thing, but some good sound bites and nuggets to dig into and help people get orange pilled. All right, let me know what you think. Let me know if you've actually thought of it in these terms before as well. And also, if you found it valuable, you know what to do. Smash that HBO special, help brother out, like, subscribe, comment down below. And until next time, lift daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.
Want to pay your in real life bills with crypto? How about send crypto directly to anyone with a bank account? SPRITZ Finance is a decentralized solution to be your own bank and connect your crypto earnings to real world bills and payments. They do not take custody of your assets and allow support on multiple blockchains and Web3 wallets. Sign up below using my referral link and you will get $50 back when you make your first $50 bill payment with crypto. Additionally, I will be using referral bonuses to airdrop, donate, or burn based on community feedback. Sign up now